Hollywood stunned as Pedro Pascal walks off Jimmy Kimmel Live after host's insensitive remarks about trans rights activism. What began as a routine promotional interview for Fantastic Four quickly descended into one of the most uncomfortable confrontations in late-night television history. The tension in the studio was palpable as the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. What had started as a standard celebrity interview on Jimmy Kimmel Live had rapidly devolved into something far more contentious. Pedro Pascal, there to promote his role as Reed Richards in the highly anticipated Fantastic Four reboot, sat rigidly in his chair, his usually warm demeanor replaced by a steely gaze. "So, Pedro, I see you've been very active on social media lately," Kimmel said with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Particularly about certain issues that seem to be quite fashionable in Hollywood these days." The audience's laughter was scattered, uncertain. Pascal took a sip of water, his expression unreadable. "If you're referring to my support for trans rights, Jimmy, then yes. Though I wouldn't characterize basic human dignity as fashionable," Pascal replied, his voice level but firm. Kimmel leaned back, a practiced look of exaggerated confusion crossing his face. "It's just interesting how actors suddenly become experts on complex social issues. I mean, you play pretend for a living, right?" The audience fell silent. The camera caught Pascal's jaw tightening, but his response was measured. "I don't claim to be an expert, Jimmy. I listen to people's lived experiences and show support for a community that faces discrimination. That doesn't require an advanced degree." "Right, right," Kimmel nodded, feigning agreement while clearly dismissing Pascal's words. "But don't you think there's a certain, let's call it bandwagon effect happening? It seems like everyone in Hollywood has to have the same opinions or risk being cancelled." Pascal placed his glass down deliberately. The studio lights reflected off his face as he took a deep breath. "This isn't about having the right opinions for Hollywood. My sister is trans, Jimmy. This is personal for me. It's about standing up for family and for people who are being targeted by harmful legislation and rhetoric." The production team began to look nervous. This wasn't the light-hearted banter typically featured on the show. Guillermo, Kimmel's sidekick, glanced off-stage as if seeking guidance from producers. "Hey, I'm all for people living however they want," Kimmel said, raising his hands defensively. "I just think the whole thing has gotten a bit excessive. Can't we just make jokes anymore without everyone getting offended?" Pascal's eyes narrowed slightly. "The issue isn't jokes, Jimmy. It's punching down at vulnerable communities. There's a difference between comedy and cruelty." The audience was divided now, some clapping in support of Pascal while others remained silent. Kimmel seemed caught off guard by the crowd's reaction, but doubled down. "Come on, Pedro. You're from Chile, originally, right? Don't you think America has gone a bit soft? Everyone's walking on eggshells these days." Pascal sat straighter in his chair. "Actually, I think treating people with respect is a sign of strength, not weakness. And bringing up my heritage to suggest I should somehow be less compassionate is interesting." The tension escalated as Kimmel attempted to pivot back to discussing the movie, but the damage was done. The interview had veered far off course, and neither man was willing to back down. "Anyway, in Fantastic Four, you play Reed Richards, the smartest man in the world," Kimmel said, forcing a smile. "Must be quite a stretch for you, huh?" The joke fell flat, the jab unmistakable. Pascal didn't laugh. "I'd like to think intelligence includes empathy and understanding, not just scientific knowledge." "Right, right," Kimmel said dismissively. "So tell us about the movie. I'm guessing there are plenty of explosions to distract from the plot?" "Actually, the film deals with themes of acceptance and understanding differences," Pascal countered. "Reed Richards learns that his intelligence means nothing if he can't connect with others on a human level. There might be a lesson there." The studio grew uncomfortably quiet. Kimmel's smile became strained as he realized the interview was spiraling out of his control. A producer could be seen frantically gesturing from the sidelines, likely suggesting, "A commercial break." "Well, we should probably talk about your costume," Kimmel said, clearly trying to move to safer territory. "Those Fantastic Four suits are pretty tight. Did you have to do a lot of working out, or is there some CGI magic happening there?" "The suits are designed by the same team that worked on several recent superhero films," Pascal replied coolly. "But, I'm curious, Jimmy, would you ask that same question to my female co-stars? Because the objectification in your question is exactly the kind of thing that contributes to the problems we're discussing." The audience let out a collective "ooh" as Kimmel's face reddened. The host tried to laugh it off, but his discomfort was evident. "It was just a joke, Pedro. Lighten up. This is a comedy show, after all." "Is it comedy, though?" Pascal asked, the question hanging in the air. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like thinly veiled contempt." Kimmel's producer was now openly signaling for a break, but Kimmel seemed determined to have the last word. "Look, not everyone has to agree with your politics. Some of us can still take a joke without turning it into a TED Talk on social justice." Pascal sat in silence for a beat, then calmly removed his microphone. The audience gasped. "I came here to discuss a film I'm proud of," he said quietly. "Not to be mocked for standing up for vulnerable people, including my own family. I think we're done here." The cameras captured Kimmel's expression of shock as Pascal stood up from his chair. The audience was completely silent now, the tension in the studio electric. Would Pascal actually walk off the set of one of America's most popular late-night shows? Kimmel seemed to realize the severity of the situation and made one last attempt to salvage the interview. "Come on, Pedro, sit down. We can talk about something else. Tell us about working with the director." But Pascal was already stepping away from the desk, his expression resolute. Social media would explode within minutes, clips would go viral by morning, and the entertainment industry would be left to grapple with one question: what happens next? The studio fell into chaos. As Pascal walked past the cameras, Kimmel's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. He couldn't let it end like this. Not on his show, not on his watch. "That's right, run away when the conversation gets tough," Kimmel called after him, his voice carrying clearly despite Pascal's microphone being removed. "I thought Mr. Fantastic was supposed to be brave." The audience gasped. Pascal stopped in his tracks, turned slowly and faced Kimmel. The cameras captured every nuance of his expression, calm yet fierce. "Bravery isn't about winning arguments, Jimmy. It's about knowing when to take a stand." Pascal's voice was quieter now, but somehow it filled the entire studio. "I won't be part of a platform that mocks the struggles of vulnerable people for cheap laughs." A producer rushed onto the stage, desperately trying to defuse the situation. He whispered urgently to Kimmel, whose eyes widened in alarm. The network executives were already blowing up the control room phones. This was live television, unfiltered and uncontrollable. "We're going to commercial break," Kimmel announced abruptly, but the damage was done. Half the audience was standing now, some applauding Pascal, others looking confused or uncomfortable. As the applause sign flashed desperately, Pascal continued his exit. Behind him, chaos erupted in the studio. Guillermo looked panicked, whispering frantically to a floor manager. The band started playing awkwardly, trying to cover the uncomfortable silence. "Cut to commercial," a producer screamed from offstage, but the cameras kept rolling for several excruciating seconds, capturing Kimmel's frozen smile and the empty chair where Pascal had been sitting. The feed finally cut, but phones were already out in the audience. Dozens of viewers had captured what the network couldn't edit out. An A-list star walking off one of America's most watched late-night shows in protest. Backstage, Pascal was immediately surrounded by his publicist and the show's executive producer, both speaking over each other in urgent whispers. "Pedro, please reconsider," the producer begged. We can fix this. Come back after the break. Clear the air. There's nothing to fix, Pascal replied firmly, removing his earpiece and handing it to a stunned production assistant. My position on this isn't negotiable. His publicist looked both terrified and impressed. The studio is going to freak out about Fantastic Four publicity, she warned, already checking her vibrating phone. Marvel executives are calling already. They'll understand, Pascal said with quiet confidence. And if they don't, that's something I'll have to live with. Some things are more important than movie promotions. Meanwhile, in the control room, panic had descended. The director was frantically signaling through headsets, producers were making emergency calls, and the show's head writer was hurriedly scribbling new material for Kimmel to use when they returned from the unplanned extended commercial break. We need damage control now, the executive producer shouted. Get me anyone from Fantastic Four on the phone. A co-star, a director, anyone. On the set, Kimmel sat alone at his desk during the break, ignoring the makeup person trying to powder his increasingly sweaty face. His expression had darkened as he scrolled through his phone. Twitter was already exploding with hashtags. A Pascal walkout and Kimmel cancelled were trending within minutes. This is getting out of hand, Kimmel muttered to his longtime producer, who had rushed to his side. He's making me look like the villain here. That's because you are acting like one, a voice said. It was one of the writers, usually quiet in production meetings, but now surprisingly bold. He was talking about his trans sister, Jimmy. This isn't just politics, it's personal for him. Kimmel's face fell as the realization hit him. He'd pushed. Too far, miscalculated badly. What had started as what he thought was edgy humor had turned into something ugly, revealing aspects of himself he wasn't comfortable confronting. Outside the studio, Pascal stood in the night air, taking deep breaths. His phone buzzed constantly, calls from his agent, texts from castmates, notifications of social media support pouring in from fans and fellow actors alike. One message caught his eye, from his sister. Saw what happened? I love you. You okay? Pascal typed a response. A commotion erupted behind him. The studio door burst open, and out walked an unlikely figure. It was Guillermo, Kimmel's sidekick, looking nervous but determined. Mr. Pascal, Guillermo said, his voice shaking slightly. Jimmy, he wants to talk to you. Not on camera, just talk. Pascal looked up from his phone, his expression unreadable. To what end? I don't know, man, Guillermo admitted, showing a rare moment of candor. But this is not good. For anyone. Inside, the commercial break was ending. Decisions had to be made. The band was playing, the audience was buzzing with anticipation, and social media was erupting with speculation. What would happen? When the cameras started rolling again? Pascal stared at Guillermo for a long moment, then nodded once. 5 minutes. Off camera. Guillermo led him through a side entrance, away from the prying eyes of the audience and production team. In a small dressing room, Jimmy Kimmel was pacing, his usual confident demeanor shattered. When the door opened, he looked up, his expression, a complex mixture of defensiveness and something Pascal hadn't expected. Genuine regret. Thank you for coming, Kimmel said, his voice stripped of its usual sarcasm. Pascal remained by the door. I'm listening. Look, Kimmel began, then stopped, running a hand through his hair. I messed up. Badly. I thought I was being edgy or provocative or whatever bullshit I tell myself when I'm punching down. But the truth is, I wasn't thinking about real people. About your sister. The room fell silent. Outside, they could hear the countdown to returning from commercial. 3 minutes. This isn't just about my sister, Pascal said quietly. It's about responsibility. You have a platform that reaches millions. What you say matters. Kimmel nodded, his usual quips nowhere to be found. I know, and I've been careless with that responsibility. Repeatedly. he met Pascal's eyes. "I'm not asking you to come back on camera. You made your point, and you were right to walk off. But I want to address what happened. The right way. 2 minutes. What are you proposing?" Pascal asked, his expression guarded but listening. "Let me go out there and own this. No jokes, no deflection. Just accountability." Kimmel's voice was earnest in a way that surprised even himself. "I won't drag you back into it or misrepresent what happened." Pascal studied him, weighing sincerity against years of Kimmel's brand of often caustic humor. "And tomorrow? Next week? Will it be back to the same jokes at the expense of vulnerable communities?" 1 minute. "No," Kimmel said firmly. "This isn't a PR move. This was a wake-up call I've probably needed for a long time." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to have you back on the show sometime. On your terms. Maybe with your sister, if she'd be willing. Not as damage control, but as an opportunity to learn and do better." The stage manager's voice echoed down the hallway. 30 seconds. Pascal's phone buzzed again. Another message from his sister. "Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you." 15 seconds. "Your move, Jimmy," Pascal said finally. "Show me this isn't just talk." He extended his hand. Kimmel took it, relief washing over his face. "Thank you." As Kimmel hurried back to the stage, Pascal watched from the wings, still skeptical but willing to see what would happen next. The theme music played. The cameras rolled. The audience, still buzzing with speculation, fell quiet as Kimmel walked back to his desk, noticeably without his usual bouncing entrance. "Welcome back," he said, his voice subdued. "As you probably noticed, we had an unscripted moment earlier with Pedro Pascal." Pausing, he looked directly into the camera. "I want to be clear about something. Pedro was right to walk off this show tonight," the audience murmured in surprise. "What began as what I thought was edgy comedy was actually me being thoughtless and harmful." Kimmel's voice was steady, his usual persona nowhere in sight. When someone tells you they're standing up for their family and for vulnerable communities, the right response isn't to mock them. It's to listen. From the wings, Pascal watched, arms crossed but expression softening. Slightly. His publicist stood beside him, stunned into silence. Pedro mentioned his trans sister, and instead of recognizing the human impact of what we were discussing, I doubled down on jokes that weren't just unfunny. They were hurtful. Kimmel took a deep breath. "That's not the kind of show I want to host, and it's not the kind of person I want to be." The audience was completely silent now, witnessing something rare in television, an unscripted, genuine moment of accountability. "I've spoken briefly with Pedro, and I've apologized for my behavior tonight. But I want to make a broader commitment. To you, our viewers. I can do better. I will do better." Kimmel looked toward the wings where Pascal stood. "And I'm grateful to guests like Pedro who have the courage to hold me accountable." As the show continued, subdued but honest, Pascal slipped away. Outside the studio, reporters had already gathered, alerted by the social media firestorm. But Pascal walked past them with a simple, "No comment tonight," got into his waiting car, and called his sister. 2 weeks later, viewership data showed something remarkable. While Kimmel's ratings had initially dipped after the confrontation, they had rebounded strongly following his apology. More surprisingly, audience demographics showed a shift. Younger viewers, long drifting away from traditional late-night television, were tuning in to see a host who had demonstrated a willingness to learn and change. The following month, Kimmel kept his word. Pascal returned to the show, this time accompanied by his sister. Instead of the usual celebrity banter, they had a thoughtful conversation about representation, allyship, and the real impact of both harmful and supportive media. The segment went viral for entirely different reasons than their first encounter, garnering praise from advocacy groups and entertainment critics alike. As for Pascal, the confrontation ultimately boosted rather than harmed his career. Fantastic Four opened to record numbers, with viewers particularly responding to his portrayal of Reed Richards as a genius who learns that true intelligence includes empathy. In interviews, Pascal was respectful but firm when discussing the Kimmel incident, using it as an opportunity to highlight the importance of standing up for principles even when professionally risky. The entertainment industry took note. Other talk shows began approaching sensitive topics with more care and research. Several hosts reached out to transgender advocates for guidance on respectful coverage. What had begun as an uncomfortable confrontation had evolved into something unexpected, a moment of genuine growth, not just for Jimmy Kimmel, but for late-night television as a whole. In Hollywood, where image often triumphs over substance, the Kimmel-Pascal incident became a case study in the power of authenticity and the unexpected value of holding each other accountable, not with public shaming, but with the kind of honesty that creates space for real change.